All right, guys, welcome back to the show. I am happy to be with you as always, and it is that time of the year. It's the time when we're all heading out, gearing up, getting ready for hunts. Maybe we're coming back off hunts. Maybe you're driving out to a spot now. Maybe you got a grand adventure coming up. Maybe you're just hunting right in your backyard. But either way, I hope you guys are enjoying yourselves and soaking it all in. This week I have an awesome episode with a guy you may have heard of if you're familiar with outdoor TV at all. He's a producer and killer hunter named Jason Matzinger. He has a TV show on Sportsman Channel called Into High Country, and it's really one of my favorite shows on the channel, one of my favorite shows on outdoor TV, period. He does a really good job. It's very well shot. He's a great hunter. We had a really cool conversation kind of about the industry and about some of the projects that he is working on and has been working on. So I hope you guys enjoy it. Another quick update, I've mentioned it before on here, and we talk a little bit about it on the sheep hunt that I had mentioned. So, the other day, a few weeks ago, maybe, the guide that I was going to be sheep hunting with kind of called me up and said, "Hey man, I don't want to take your money and take you on a 10-day camping trip." He said, based on what we've seen this year, there's just not enough legal rams around. So that trip got canceled. So first of all, it was really cool of the guide to do that and just be honest and return my, part of my deposit. So thanks for that. And, but I was bummed for maybe 30 seconds, but then I realized, I think this is a blessing in disguise. I'm still going to go to Alaska and do an adventure, but the plan is right now some kind of DIY caribou hunt, which I think is maybe even better because, it's just going to be something I got to kind of try to pull off on my own, which is kind of my style, and something that, I'll learn a lot from and be able to share information with you guys. And it's probably a little bit more relatable of a hunt. So I'm looking forward to it. Still planning on going to Alaska in 2023. It's just not going to be that hunt. So I just want to give you guys that update. And, something else I did want to say really quick, I've had some guys on the podcast lately that are polarizing figures. Emotions run high for whatever reason in the outdoor industry, especially, it seems like. And there's certain guys that people identify with, certain guys people don't identify with. Some people just really can't stand certain hunters, or this guy and he said, she said, and all this stuff like that. I just want to say, my goal here is to have conversations with interesting people and guys in the outdoor industry. Just because I have someone on as a podcast guest does not mean that I condone every single thing that they do or agree with every single thing that they say or do. There might be some guys I have on here that I don't agree with at all. That's okay. The reason we have podcasts is to have real conversations. And these days, more and more, it's like if you don't agree with someone or you don't agree with how they do things, they're evil or they're bad or they're ruining something. And that's not the case. There's two sides of the story on everything. I'm not saying that I don't make mistakes or, I'm not always right. But like I said, I always try to always represent my podcast guests in a positive light. We are all, at the end of the day, we're hunters. We should, be able to talk about how we hunt and how we choose to hunt, and not get so offended and mad with each other. People do things differently, and people are just different, and that's okay. And I think we should be able to talk about it. I don't condone, like I said, everything everybody does that I have on here. I just want to have conversations. So anyway, I just feel like I needed to say that. So I hope you guys enjoy. We'll continue listening. Keep an open mind. And if you hear somebody on the podcast you don't agree with, that's fine. you don't have to listen to that episode. You know, I'm not trying to convince you of one way being right or one way being wrong. I'm just trying to have conversations. So hope you guys enjoy this episode with someone I don't think anybody really has much problem with. At least, you know, I think he's a great guy, Jason Matzinger. Great TV personality and producer, and I hope you enjoy this episode and you are enjoying hunting season, and you know, try to stay positive, stay out of the drama, and just enjoy what God has created for us. So have a good one, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, guys, welcome to the show. This is your host, Hunter McWaters, and I'm joined today by Mr. Jason Matzinger. How you doing, brother?
Good. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, thanks, man. And we were just talking, I just decided to hit record, but we were just talking about your son just drew his first antelope tag this year, huh?
Yeah, so that's out on the eastern part of the state here. This is his second year of applying for antelope. Didn't draw last year, and so I was excited that he was able to draw this year.
Nice, man. Yeah, I drove through Montana on my way back from Idaho for bear season, and that was like in, I guess, late May, and I already saw like a lot of like really decent looking bucks like already in late May. So
oh, good.
Yeah.
That's promising.
I was like driving and just dropping pins the whole way because I've been, trying to build up points. So I've hunted antelope in Wyoming. I'm gonna do another one in Wyoming this year, but I'm hoping. I don't know how many points does it take. Well, you probably don't know since you're a resident, but I should have 3 antelope points for Montana next year. Is that enough to draw anything, you think?
Yeah, I would think so, depending on which area you put in for. I mean, some areas are pretty tough, even as residents, to draw, but there's others that have pretty good odds. I would think with 3 points, you should be able to pull a tag somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not ashamed, or I'm not shy to hunt those low draw units. Actually, the one we're going to this year, you know, I'm making a film about it, and kind of the premise of the film is like, we're going to a 0.100% draw Wyoming unit, and I'm going to show, Lord willing, that it can be done.
Right on. Yeah. Well, I'm sure it can be. Wyoming's a good spot. It's a lot of fun down there. I've not done like a 0-point draw area in Wyoming, but the area that I have hunted a couple of years has been super. I mean, just a blast. It's like dreamland when it comes to bow hunting antelope.
Oh yeah. I mean, especially if you're archery hunting, I mean, that cuts down on your pressure a lot. I mean, like this unit I'm going to, it's going to be tough. I mean, it's a good antelope area and a big unit, but the public is fairly limited, and there's a lot of pressure because there's limited, you know, public. So the biggest issue is going to be access and pressure. But yeah, I mean, if you go during archery season, that opens up even more opportunity.
Sure. Yeah,
man.
Yeah, we had a blast down there.
Yeah, it's so fun. This was from last year. That was my first one, and that was just
sweet.
That was a 1-point unit. So
yeah.
But yeah, man, I'm also headed out your way. I drew my first Montana general deer tag this year.
Oh, right on. You're one of the few non-residents I've heard of doing
really
good here. But yeah, it's been pretty thin, I think, for a lot of my buddies anyway that I know of that applied for Montana.
Okay.
It's been pretty limited this year. So
okay, well,
right on. Congratulations.
Yeah, man, I'm really looking forward to that. It's going to be a lot of fun. You know, I wasn't really going to talk to you much about this, but while we're on the topic, just any high-level 30,000-foot advice for a first-timer coming out there to hunt that tag?
What are you focusing on, mule deer or whitetail?
Yeah, mule deer.
Mule deer. Well, I mean, you know, I think first of all, just based on what I've seen with the amount of pressure the last few years, just getting away from roads is a big deal. You know, I mean, like that roadless layer from OnX is always a good tool to kind of get into the area you want to hunt and sort of dissect it, break down the areas where you're, probably going to encounter fewer people. It's getting harder to get away from people, generally speaking. I mean, we're getting so proficient at what we do. But I think, that's the main thing. It's just kind of don't get discouraged by the initial blast of people you may encounter in some areas. If you're willing to kind of dig in, I think you can still find some pretty quality hunting opportunities.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was thinking about heading, kind of on the eastern side of the state. And, I know water can be an issue in some of those areas. So kind of my thinking now is to kind of, go to a spot in my vehicle, hopefully, identify something decent with like e-scouting, and then kind of set up a base camp and then, go in for maybe a night or two or something like that at a time and just see if I can get a little bit further in away from folks.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you should do pretty good doing that. I mean, the thing about Eastern Montana is, there's nowhere big enough that in a couple of days you're not going to be able to just get through the country to some other form of civilization. Yeah. So if you're willing to spend a couple of days out there, I mean, you'll be in the middle of it. So yeah, I'm sure you'll do just fine.
Cool, man. Well, I'm interested in you just career-wise and stuff like that. You've made a very successful career of what you do. We guys are in season like 13 now. Is that correct, of your show?
Yep. I think we're airing episode 6 right now of season 13 this week.
Nice, man. So I'd love to just hear a little bit. I mean, for the listeners, but also for myself, just a little bit of your background, but with focus on like where you got this desire to get into, content. Well, they call it content creation now, but producing a TV show and the filming stuff and how you got your start.
Well, I mean, really what started it for me was my dad and his friends filmed a lot of what they did. So when I was little, I just remember them projecting the 8mm little 2-minute reels of film onto the wall that with no sound or anything. And the ones I remember specifically are like his buffalo hunt in South Dakota and their caribou hunts in Quebec, and then just like trips through Yellowstone where Dad would film animals, bighorn sheep and elk and things like that. And I think that's really what started it for me. And then just kind of continuing on, like he always had a camera, and him and his best friend George always took a lot of pride in their photography while they were out there hunting, way before social media or really even any place to show it other than if you actually got to go to their house or whatever and look through the photo album.
Right.
But they, before anybody I ever knew, took a ton of pride in what they did. And as far as photographing and setting up like good trophy shots and wiping the blood off and making sure everything looked real nice to present it. And they just did it for their own good at that point. But I think just some of those small steps along the way kind of help kind of plant that seed in my head as far as what it took to go out there and carry a camera and try to capture those moments the best you can and present it to people in a kind of very classy, high level sort of fashion. And so I think stuff like that started it, and just being here in Bozeman and just our opportunities right around here. At that point, Bozeman was a pretty small town still. And, there was a lot of opportunity right around here, just out our back door for a variety of wildlife. So it was easy to kind of go out there and fall in love with bear hunting and fall in love with elk hunting and deer hunting and antelope and mountain lion and everything with the changing of the seasons. So that's really what got it going for me, and just kind of filming Dad and his friends as I got older and still too young to hunt. And then when it was me and my friends just trying to film what we were doing, and there was no real goal in mind. I didn't think it was ever going to be a TV show. I just enjoyed doing it, like showing it to my friends. And before I knew it, I had this giant archive of just so much footage from kind of all over North America. And so it was easy to, once the TV model was there and kind of an avenue to take, it was a lot easier for me to kind of find a home for this stuff, since I had such a big archive. And from there, it just took people who believed in what I wanted to do, and locally here in Bozeman, there was enough outdoor companies and people in that space who, made sense. People, local friends of mine, like, John Edwards with Schnee's Boots and Shoes, and the Powderhorn here in town, or Montana Canvas. Those are friends of mine with the wall tents, and, a couple of those guys, Mystery Ranch. I mean, these were some of my first partners before I even had a show. I was just doing DVDs and selling them locally. And, it just kind of built from there. And all of a sudden hunting TV really started to blow up, and it was more obtainable since video cameras to consumers became more affordable, to be able to have broadcast quality and HD and quality sound. It was affordable to the public for the first time. Around that time I was getting into filming, you could buy cameras that could do a pretty darn good job for, a few $1,000 versus having to be into it for 40 or 50,000.
Yeah.
So all these things just kind of snowballed into getting an opportunity at TV, and haven't really looked back since. So,
yeah. So, were you kind of, I guess you started off really self-producing and filming a lot of it yourself, and filming as well as hunting, right?
Yeah. I mean, really what I enjoyed doing was filming wildlife and filming close encounters and like epic scenes, I mean, I grew up watching not only my dad and his friends, but Marty Stauffer and Gordon Eastman. Those were two of my idols.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of their films wasn't hunting. It was just the wildlife itself, documenting kind of their struggles and what they go through every year. And
right.
So really what started it for me wasn't only just capturing hunting, but trying to capture wildlife. And so I loved being behind the camera. I still do. It's just when the show started, it needed a host. And so, there was a number of years where I was doing all the filming, but I would still have to get in front of the camera and talk to it, and then get behind it, and then film the hunt, and then get in front of it. And I enjoy that. It just, to the scale things have grown, it's hard for me to do that all the time anymore, as on the level that I want to capture this stuff.
For sure. I mean, it's so hard to focus on professionally capturing a hunt as it is, and then if you add on top of it trying to get an animal on the ground and professionally capture it, it's really hard.
Yeah, for sure. It is fun though. I'm always, I find, halfway through the season when I have somebody filming me, I'm always, when it's slow, kind of like jealous of them behind the lens back there, looking back, wondering what shots they're getting, all that kind of stuff. And I'm just kind of twiddling my thumbs, but
yeah.
Yeah,
I got a couple hunts this year where I hired some kind of young gun guys that are trying to get, started and stuff like that, on a, and, but I'm still going to bring a camera and help just cause I want to. It's just fun.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I agree. I filmed all my spring stuff by myself this year, and it was refreshing to kind of get back to doing it the way I used to. And I enjoy that time out there by myself. I really do. But yeah, like
You a
I
big
said,
solo? Are you a solo hunter? Like I've tried it. It's not for me. Like I'd rather just be with at least one other person. But I know some guys love the solo thing. Do you like it?
I do. I mean, I don't think I would want to do it all the time by any means,
Yeah.
but I really do like hunting by myself. I like that time. I think it's very productive, not only on the hunting front, but mentally. You know, it seems like I can get a lot of work done, kind of like when it comes to thinking about projects or what I need to do when I get home with family and all that kind of stuff while I'm out there, as
Yeah.
well as, you know, I feel like I'm a better hunter when I'm by myself.
Yeah. And
Maybe not all the time, but
I can see that too. I mean, as you get more confident in being out there, more comfortable with it, it would be a little more enjoyable. But I'm interested. So, like, when you started the TV show and you're doing kind of your own thing and doing DVDs, and then it went to TV. Was that? I mean, I'm assuming it was a pretty formal process of like putting together probably a business plan. I'm probably getting some investment funds. Can you walk me through some of that? What that was like?
well, for me, it was pretty,
And those are assumptions. I don't know.
yeah, for me, really what ended up happening was when Schnee's and the Powderhorn was bought by their new owner, John Edwards. I became friends with John. And at the time, Schnee's was working with a few different hunting TV shows. And so I was able to sort of present to him what I had captured through the years. And the previous owner of the Powderhorn that he had bought here was my dad's best friend. So the Powderhorn was the store that I grew up in and had bought all my first things, first bow and rifle and slingshot, and all my pictures of being little were like, and growing up hunting were in there. So it was kind of this easy fit because a lot of the film I had was with my dad and his best friend George, whose family had started the Powderhorn in like the 40s, I believe,
Oh, cool.
1940s. And so it just made sense for them to want to sort of get behind what I was doing, be able to have a little more control over the messaging and everything, and then also include people in the show that have been a part of these companies since their existence, really, you know, using Schnee's and getting outfitted out of the Powderhorn in Main Street here in Bozeman. And so it was just kind of an easy fit. And at that time, John wanted to, you know, go after the TV stuff a little more aggressively. And so we just decided to partner. He would put his kind of stamp on the show, and I would provide the content and do the editing and, you know, do all of that kind of work. And so to begin with, John sort of underwrote the show, said, okay, I'll go sign the contract with the Sportsman's Channel. And as long as you promise me you're going to, you know, do this show. And so that's really where it started. And we hosted it together for a couple of years. And then, you know, he got so busy just doing things within his own company and structuring and things that I kind of took it on my own. And they're still one of my biggest partners today.
Nice.
Schnee's Boots. So yeah, I got lucky just in kind of what I had and who I knew and the timing of everything and all of that, really. So
yeah, man. So you know, as far as like, you know, I think a lot of people, you know, get excited like, oh, you know, I want to go film my hunts and stuff like that, and that's great. But as you know, like where the magic really happens is in the edit and the storytelling. And I think a lot of people just they come back with all this maybe even great footage, and then they realize the hours it's going to take to put together well, and maybe they kind of give up. So I mean, what was that process like for you? Did you kind of learn that stuff on the fly? Do you you know, do you really enjoy that? Like for me, if I'm on a hunt, especially, there's something when I start editing, it's just like, the juices start going. I get addicted to it. Like, I'm in the middle of putting together this antelope film right now that I'm going to release soon. And like, it's like, like when I'm downstairs with the kids, I'm like thinking about like, oh, I got to go finish that edit. Like, I have to finish it. Like, I love it. So anyway, what's that like? What was that process and learning on that stuff and like for you?
Yeah, I mean, kind of the same thing. Like when I first started doing the DVDs, it was all self-taught. I mean, I had a couple companies here locally, like I said, Mystery Ranch, Montana Canvas, Schnee's, that before it was a TV show, basically hooked me up with some gear, like got me a tent, got me a backpack, got me some boots, and I didn't want to let them down. So I knew I needed to create something. And at that time, I didn't know how to edit or anything. So at the time, I was working on Avid Express Pro, and it came with a set of DVDs. And I was able to just go through the first DVD, like have the DVD playing here and have the computer set up here and just watch the first episode. I don't know if I made it through all of it, because I think that I got impatient and I probably got through like 10 out of the 15 and was like, oh, I pretty much know what I need to know now.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I knew enough just to kind of be dangerous and took off editing. And then, yeah, it wasn't that long later, I got the chance to like chase the TV show and just went in. And it was a disaster to begin with, because that was at the exact time that I started airing that network TV was switching from standard definition to high definition.
Yeah.
And the what was even more of a disaster was the ratio. The format went from 4:3 to 16:9.
Yep.
Well, most of what I collected leading up, those 60 hunts or 80 hunts or whatever I had, was all 4:3, but I had to transcode it and then reformat it.
Wow.
And get it to all fit the HD stuff that I was now mixing in, because I had now bought new camera gear, because that's what it needed to be on TV. Right. So I had all this 4:3 that was SD and all this 16:9 that was HD, and trying to combine it all. And I was completely green to everything. I mean, I didn't even know what the word transcode meant. I didn't know what formatting was. I didn't know any of that stuff. And so thank goodness that the Sportsman's Channel at the time was patient with me, to the point where I remember the first episode, what I was doing too. I didn't even know how to export a file, like a link or an upload, any of that kind of stuff. My mind only knew tape. And so for me to send my episodes in season 1, I would have to edit my show, and then I would put it back in my little tape player thing here, and I would record it back to the tape, and then I would label the tape, and then I would mail the tape to the network, and then the network would put it in, and they would go through it. And thankfully, they were so patient with me. I mean, I probably mailed in, I don't know, 5 or 7 tapes before finally they were like, okay, this will work. We can make this work. And so I didn't really know what I was doing. I just kind of knew what made it work for that first episode. And then I kind of tried to just like emulate it throughout the season until finally, after like a couple years of doing it, like the light bulb sort of started to click what I was actually doing. And then I was able to not have to record it to a tape. And, it was crazy. Like I said, I was so green. I didn't do updates on any of my editing software. I didn't really understand how that would help. And so my software would fail all the time, to the point where the first couple of years when I was doing these exports, it would take hours to export it back. And it would fail a lot of the time. And when it would fail, it would sound this like obnoxious ding. And so I would sleep on my office floor, because normally I was so up against a deadline that if I went home and it failed, there's no way I would
done.
get it in on time. And then they would have to do a rerun and my ratings would go down. And because like new episodes are really what drive your ratings. More new episodes, better your ratings, because people are recording new episodes versus like reruns. And so anyway, anytime you have to do a rerun, you don't typically get as good of numbers unless it's like Thanksgiving Day or something, you know, where people are sitting down watching TV. But yeah, so I remember sleeping here just like almost one eye open, just hoping to God
you don't hear that ding.
I didn't hear the ding. Yeah.
Dude, so are you still pretty involved with your editing, or is it are you more of like a producer role, kind of sitting over the shoulder kind of thing?
No, actually, I hired somebody to help me for a few seasons, the Outdoor Media Group, with about half of the episodes. And since about 3 years ago, I've taken it completely back and just do all the editing again on my own. So
that's cool, man. And it's so much more personal, and it's hard to hand over a bunch of footage you care a lot about to somebody else, because almost no matter how good it is, you're going to wish you could have done it different.
Oh, sure. There's just so much lost in the edit when you don't feel each clip and you weren't there to sort of know how that relates to other clips, you know, and it's easy to sort of have a lot of emotion lost through the passing off of the process. So, I enjoy it. It just, time is getting to be a big thing for me. Like, you know, right now I've got 6 episodes edited for the season, and hunting season's about to start, and I have like 5 or 6 more I have to do. You know, new ones are due basically second week of September, so it's going to catch me real quick.
And like editing something that you care about too, it's like you're never done, you just run out of time. Like you could go through it 1 billion times and still be making tiny tweaks the whole way. Like, so it's just like at some point you just have to be like, okay, I have to stop now. Like you have to like give yourself a deadline. So I know what that's like.
It's never done. It's just due.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So you mentioned earlier about like some companies like giving you gear and stuff like that. And like, so that's something, you know, I'm still really on the very beginning of trying to, you know, build a career here. And, you know, I've been very selective about approaching potential companies to work with and stuff like that, just because I know a lot of people are like, overly aggressive and obnoxious about it and like just really turn off companies. So I've been intentional about like waiting and stuff, but I'm getting to a point where I'm starting to kind of like talk to a few people and put feelers out and stuff. But did you find it hard in the beginning to make that bridge from like, oh sure, yeah, we'll send you some gear and you can, you know, use it and whatever, to actually, yeah, here's a check? Like, was that a hard transition to make, and how did you kind of get through that?
Well, I think for me, the TV show is really what separated that. You know, I mean, it's easy to, because I mean, getting gear is one thing, but like, it's all about impressions, you know? I mean, it's all about numbers and the amount of eyeballs you can get on what you're doing. It doesn't, I mean, I know super good hunters here in the valley that aren't on social media, don't have a TV show. Nobody in the hunting industry community world knows who these people are, and they're people I look up to. And so, you know, you can be the best hunter out there, but if you know, you don't have a way for people to see what you're doing, it doesn't make sense for companies or people to want to sort of promote what they're doing through your channels, you know? So for me, having a TV show, I mean, when I air an episode, I'll get, you know, on the low end, usually a couple 100,000 views. every time I drop a new episode, and then it kind of trickles off. So I'll air 4 or 5 times a week I'll drop a new episode and then it'll rerun like 4 times throughout that week. And throughout that, it might get 1 million plus views in a week. And then there's a new episode that gets that same thing. And it's a very focused audience. The people that tune into the Sportsman's Channel or Outdoor Channel, they're tuning in for a reason. Mm-hmm. They're not just randomly scrolling through and then just really stopping and watching for any amount of time. Whereas like, YouTube or social media or other platforms, people can sort of stumble into what you're doing and watch it and you get that click, but they're not like a focused buyer or consumer or whatever. Right. So for me, being able to have that platform where I know I put something on TV and I'm going to get a pile of views while I'm actually off working on something else is huge for me. And that's where I was able to really make that transition from a guy that just wanted to chase this to a guy that was actually starting to make money for doing it, mm-hmm. because I had this platform that was a guaranteed, almost like a magazine subscription or something. It was a guarantee that I could turn around and tell these companies, well, I'm going to air from July 1st through the end of the year. I'm going to have at least 13 new episodes and they're going to rerun for 13 weeks and they're going to come on 4 times a week. And so I had this model that I could hand people and say, here's what I'm going to do, guaranteed, mm-hmm. And so that was really that transition of just getting some free gear here and there to being able to sort of make a living at it.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's just, I started with Sportsman's Channel, and since then Sportsman's Channel has now done things like My Outdoor TV, which is their online streaming app for all their shows for Outdoor and Sportsman's Channel. And so, now working with them, I'm on TV, but I'm also on this My Outdoor TV app. But they also are now streaming all shows on Amazon and Roku and Prime mm-hmm. or Apple. And so people are finding the show all over. So it just keeps spreading. I'm on Sportsman's Channel Canada and Carbon TV and Waypoint TV and, just a number of platforms. And so, like I said, when it comes down to eyeballs and I can turn around, and that, doesn't include social media at all or YouTube. And I can turn around and say to these companies, I can guarantee you this many sort of eyeballs every single month. That just is a snowball that sort of continues to grow, basically. Absolutely. Through just longevity.
Yeah. And you kind of mentioned like, moving onto the app and Carbon TV and stuff like that. And like, do you think like, how is the transition from like a high level as a producer, looking at this and looking at the industry and kind of being, in the time period you're in where things have really shifted or seem to be shifting a lot into digital from like a cable TV kind of platform. How do you see that going, or like, how's that been for you? Do you think, young guys like me starting out should still consider looking at like a traditional TV route, or is it going all digital, or what do you think?
It's a hard question to answer, only because I think my show's still doing really well because of when I got into TV and being able to sort of build that up. I mean, but at the same time, I mean, my show is still the bread and butter of what I do today. I've got the conservation films and the short films and working with the conservation organizations and stuff like that. But really the basis is the TV show, and it's done nothing even with the growth of online and these other platforms, my show has done nothing but grow when it comes to numbers and my partnerships and things like that. So, you know, there's definitely been this perception that maybe TV's lost some of its momentum, but I have never personally seen that. In fact, I've seen the opposite, because so many people have went to online. And so there's a lot of value for the people that are still on TV. I mean, a big chunk of my partners want to work with me because I have that TV show, for reasons like I listed before. It's a focused audience and it's a lot of numbers. I mean, you know, you got to work hard. I also have a YouTube channel, and I also have Instagram and all of that kind of stuff. And like, you got to work really hard to get 250,000 views on anything you do over a year period, let alone saying, well, I'm going to get that. I got that last night while I was eating tacos at my dad's house, you know, seriously.
Yeah.
And so, TV,
yeah, YouTube is super competitive, man. There's just so much out there.
So for me, I just love the theory of like, the more the merrier. I mean, I love YouTube. I love all the online platforms. I love being on in Canada. I love Amazon. Because what I've found is, like, just when you think that you're just beating a dead horse, or that everybody in the entire world has heard of what you're doing, you meet a guy that's like shoots at your local bow shop who has no idea what you're doing, has never even heard of it at all. Yeah. And so I've found that, you know, being on all those platforms is strong. But for me, definitely, like, man, TV is a big one for me.
For sure.
I have that commercial time, those 30-second spots, you know, and I'm able to basically position my partners in those 30-second commercial slots that get a lot of eyeballs. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value to TV, in my opinion, still. And I think it's just come back because online is so saturated. It's hard to sort of find, you know, those right channels to keep you kind of seeing what you want to see. And so I feel like TV has gotten a resurgence of support because of that.
Yeah.
So,
dang, that's interesting, man. So, okay, your seasons are what, 13 episodes?
Typically, yeah.
I mean, the style of hunting you're doing. So I don't have cable TV, just transparency. So, you know, I've watched some of your stuff on YouTube, but I haven't seen like a ton of like your full like seasons, right?
Sure.
There's no way you're getting 12 tags a year or going on 12 trips, I don't think. Are you able to, like, let's say you got a big trip to, and maybe I'm wrong, but maybe you got a big like elk hunt. Are you able to get 2-3 episodes out of that?
Sometimes I'll get 2 episodes out of a hunt. Yeah.
So how are you able to do that many episodes?
Well, like, I'm just thinking like this season, you know, I start off with my archery Montana elk hunt. Then I do archery antelope in Montana. Then I hunted Oklahoma for whitetails last year, and you're able to shoot 2 bucks. So that was 2 episodes. Then I shot my Montana mule deer. Then I hosted some buddies out here in Montana that came out from Ohio that both got a couple of deer. Then I do my spring bear hunt every year. I hunted Texas this spring for javelina, aoudad, and axis. My son shot a really nice buck in Oklahoma this year, a whitetail. That's going to be, that was a hunt with my dad, my boy, and I. Then I usually do like a looking back episode, like a best of 2021.
I watched the best of 2020. That was cool with the helicopter hunt.
Oh yeah, right on. And then I'm trying to think what I'm leaving on the table. Like this year, I'm doing my dad's buddy that I've referenced several times, George, he passed away this year. And so I'm doing a tribute to him as an episode with a bunch of just older footage and newer footage I have of him through the years, just doing a whole tribute to him. And yeah, typically I'll have like my spring turkey hunt. And, you know.
So you're just doing a lot of hunts.
A lot, yeah.
So, okay, which leads me to my next question. Well, first of all, real quick, is it still like a time buy thing for those channels, the TV channels? Okay. Mm-hmm. And so, okay, I only have, let's see, I got 4 trips. Yeah, I got 4 trips, 4 out-of-state trips. It's a little bit more logistic heavy for me coming from Virginia, but I got 4 out-of-state trips planned this year, not including spring bear, so probably 5. And I'm like, I'm already kind of starting to feel the pressure a little bit. I mean, it's going to be like, bang, 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 gone 2 weeks, home 2 weeks, gone 2 weeks, home 2 weeks, gone 2 weeks, home 2 weeks. And I got a young family and stuff like that. And how are you able to balance family, but also how are you able to keep it? Because especially with a traditional TV contract, you have a contract you have to deliver a certain amount of episodes. Like, how do you balance the pressure of that and still enjoy it?
Well, I think I've just
what if you have a bad year and you fill like 1 tag? Like, are you just screwed?
No, it wouldn't be good. But I think I did a good job of letting my viewers down enough in the beginning. They don't expect much from me these days. No, I'm just kidding. I just have never taken it as pressure. I mean, I got into it because I love what I do, and I've always decided that I would stick true to my hunting in the way that I've always done it. And so I've never felt pressure to kill an animal. And I've always believed that, if you put your time in and you're persistent, things will come together, And so I've always, unless it gets me like super excited, I don't take the animal. And I found that people appreciate that more than a guy that shoots a buck that they can tell he's not happy with. And then he tries to turn on the stoke factor just because he's trying to make a video to impress people. Mm-hmm. Like, I don't know. People can see through that. I think people these days, from what I've seen, would rather see the guy that was like, man, I mean, for me, for example, now this is my opinion, obviously, and I don't fault anybody for doing it any way they want to, but how I've been able to still just thoroughly enjoy what I do is just sticking to hunting for me and nobody else, no matter what's on the line. And so, like this spring bear season, I saw 29 bears. 3 of them, in my mind, were shooters. 1 of them I became slightly obsessed with, but I found him really late, and I just was never able to catch up with him. But I had a lot of encounters with grizz, and I found a big set of moose paddles. And I think that people would rather be like, wow, I would like to watch the show of the guy that saw 29 bears and had this awesome experience and didn't get one, versus another show of a guy that goes out and shoots the first bear he sees. And that's really all you see. You don't learn about the animal. You don't learn about the country. You don't learn about, what's it take to find a quality one? How are you, just all of that stuff. And so in my mind, I think just hunting for me and what makes me happy, and then creating a show around that has been the key to sort of staying happy and kind of successful, and never being like, oh, I told him I was going to kill at least a 150 this year, so I better kill a 150 or this season's just not going to work out well. And I just would, that's a losing proposition. And I've just I always told myself from the get-go I was never going to shoot an animal to make a TV show. Like if it didn't get me so stoked, I wasn't going to do it. And so I just hunt and hunt and hunt until I see that animal or spot it where I'm just like so excited and jittery. I'm not sure whether to like grab my bow or grab the camera, or you just kind of get flustered, and I'm like, okay, this is good. This is what I'm after.
Yeah. So. Luckily for me at this point, that feeling comes with way smaller animals.
Well, it's interesting because I have been, kind of at this crossroads where like, yeah, I've been doing it now for 13 seasons professionally, but I've also been hunting, for at least that long before that wasn't on camera or wasn't what you would say professionally. I hunted just because I hunted. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, I've probably killed, not counting, but somewhere between, I would say 25 and 30 black bears. And so when it comes to black bear hunting, I love it. I friggin' love black bear hunting. I love the pursuit. I love that time of year. I love the challenge, but it's hard for me to find a bear after taking that many bears that like gets me amped to where I just want to like, run up there and kill it. Yeah. And so, but I also host a television show. So it is an interesting dynamic at this point where I'm at with some animals, where I'm like, man, I love what I do on both aspects. I love bear hunting and I love creating a TV show, but I'm at a point now where I just don't feel the need to go kill every bear I see.
Yeah, right.
Like when I was younger, you go through this progression as a hunter and
yeah. Can you think of I'm just interested, can you think of like a specific time, like a really specific time where you kind of found yourself out of crossroads of pure hunter versus knowing that you have a show to deliver or, something like that, and like you had to make a choice? It's a tough question.
No, not really. I mean, I feel like everything either falls into my lap and it's just obvious that this one is a gift to me or it doesn't. Because, if I'm sitting there having to talk myself into it, like, well, he looks good from that angle, but when he turns, he doesn't as big, but that, if I'm sitting there doing that, like, yeah. I'm like, okay, that's not the one.
Yeah. It's got to be like you see it and you're like, yep, I want to shoot that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of leads me to, I want to talk
but
a
it
little
isn't
bit.
always a big one too. Like to back up just a little bit, it's not always a big one. Like it's just, it's the moment, it's the experience, it's the build up, it's the hunt. It's all the things that go into it. It's not always size.
100%.
Like my landlock bull, Project Landlock that we filmed. I mean, that bull was the smallest bull I've ever taken in my life. I shot him.
That's the one that had that like weird antler coming out like the front of his forehead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing was cool. And he just walked across the, like just straight at you.
Like I was like, this has never happened. When he first came out, I was like, oh, he's not very big. And then he walked right into my lap, let me draw on him in plain view, stop broadside at whatever, 7-10 yards. And at that point, I'm just like, that's when I'm like, this is a gift. Like this is the one, and it just becomes that moment in the moment. It's nothing that you can sort of premeditate. So
for sure, like this, and this is not like a tiny this is Sitka blacktail. It's not like a tiny one, but like at the same time, like it was the last morning. We hadn't seen a buck in like 4 days, and my buddy spotted 2 of them right next to each other last morning, and we shot both of them within 30 seconds of each other, like boom, boom. And like if he was a spike, I still would have been happy. I still would have taken him because it was just this beautiful morning. It was the last morning. We've been busting our butts for 4 days, and then like I said, it was like this gift. And his was actually the 11th biggest Kodiak blacktail ever taken on record.
Dang.
So it made mine look even smaller, but I don't care. This thing is still like a trophy to me, man.
Oh yeah.
So
heck yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't know how it's going to work, but
For sure. Well, that's cool. Well, that kind of leads really naturally into, what I wanted to talk to you about a little bit too, was your sheep hunt. I know you just got back, and it was a big film project as well, I think, and
Yep.
and kind of had one of these moments we're talking about. Like I read your social media post about it and everything. So I don't know. Are you wanting to try to save that story, or can you give us the short version, or?
Yeah, I mean, basically, the film that we're working on is about the history of trophy hunting, and it's titled Selective. And I sort of had this concept starting in 2018 when I planned this hunt, and then it's been postponed for 2 years because I couldn't get into Canada.
Yeah.
Was able to get in this year and do the hunt.
Did you have to get a vax?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been 5 years in the making to try to even get up there. And so it's been a big buildup, but through that process, we've been able to capture some amazing backstory. I mean, we've been to Springfield, Missouri, to the Wonders of Wildlife Museum. We got invited to the 150th anniversary of the Boone and Crockett Club. So we were able to go in with the panel scores and actually film them doing a lot of the documenting of these trophies and things. So for the last few years, we've been documenting this story of trophy hunting, basically. And this hunt was the quintessential sort of trophy hunt. You know, you're spending money, you're flying up north, you're using airplanes, helicopters, you've got, a compound bow, an inReach, all the latest technology. You can't justify that you're there to get cheap meat. I mean, you're there
it's expensive
because you want to hunt cheap, and so versus beat around the bush, I sort of wanted to tackle the subject right on, because I just don't think we've ever come out as a whole in the hunting community with a super detailed backstory film on the whole history of this. So this hunt this whole story starts with the National Collection of Heads and Horns in the Bronx Museum. And, way back when Theodore Roosevelt first started this concept, basically, and others as well. He's just one of the more well-known ones, but it's just a fascinating story that started with a taxidermy collection from all over the world that basically ignited the fear in people to want to conserve animals. And so
just to jump in really quick, have you been to the Smithsonian Museum of Natural History in DC?
Nope. I was at the one in well, I guess maybe it's not a Smithsonian, but it's Chicago.
Okay. If you ever make it out of the East Coast, man, that's where I'm at. You can come crash at my house, but it's right near where I live. It is, I mean, it's just basically a giant taxidermy museum of like everything. It's crazy.
Yeah, that would be a good one to visit for sure, because we're trying to document as many like trophy displays or ways to sort of honor the animal as we can. Everything from
you should check out the Smithsonian
on the wall to museum displays, so yeah, for sure. We got the Wonders of Wildlife in Springfield is probably a smaller scale of the Smithsonian, but it is all same thing, just a giant taxidermy collection, start to finish, and it's all teaching you how hunting is conservation. So it's a really cool deal they have going there. But anyway, the sheep hunt is a thread within that because it is a trophy hunt. And so, but we're showing through that how beautiful a process trophy hunting is, selective harvest, only taking the oldest ones, and why that's important, and why those hunter dollars, for these animals is important to their conservation, and that whole big story. So basically I ended up killing this ram on day 9 of 10 of the hunt at 10 to 10 at night, because you can hunt all day long. It's light. So definitely starting to feel the pressure. I bow hunted up until that time, and then decided to take the ram with the rifle, get late in the hunt. And, but through that process, passed on some younger rams, snuck right up on them in their bed. Like full curl, 6-year-old ram at 3 yards right below me. And in the Northwest Territories, they only have to be 3/4 curl, I believe. Or,
oh, really?
So this ram was totally legal.
Yeah.
But a young ram, and especially in sheep, you want to take those older animals. It's super vital to their, continuation is not taking those breeder rams, even though they may be bigger or prettier or whatever. So our goal is to take a super old ram, which we did. We took a 12-year-old.
Oh, wow.
And he was just a beat up old dude and perfect for what we were wanting. And it was just an epic hunt, and just something I wish I could do every year. That style of hunting definitely helps redefine what you're capable of as a human, and kind of opens your eyes as to maybe things you've been leaving on the table in other hunts back home.
Yeah. What makes that hunt so unique? And like, I don't know, we had a little interaction on social media about, like I was saying, like, most people only get to take usually one sheep hunt in their life, if at all. So, I mean, the thought of passing a legal ram easily in range is in my opinion, takes some discipline. And, but anyway, like some people, I've said it before in the show, I actually have a sheep hunt in 23 that I was blessed to be able to book. So yeah, I mean, like up in the Alaska range. And, I don't know what makes it like a unique hunt, like, or, I don't know, just what should I be expecting?
Well, like to your point, I mean, most people will only get one sheep hunt. That'll likely be the only Doll sheep hunt I'll ever go on. I've been fortunate enough to draw bighorn sheep at 2 bighorn sheep tags here in Montana, but I'm super lucky to have been able to do that. But yeah, most people get one sheep hunt in their life, if that. And, I think it has to do with where you're hunting. I think the conversation you're referring to, the NWT where I was at, it's like the dreamland for Doll sheep. And with there's a handful of outfitters up there who are really focusing on those older rams. And so you don't really even start to look at killing a ram unless he's like 9+ at the very youngest. They like him to even be 10, And that's just because, like, when I was talking to Glenda Grote, the outfitter I was hunting with up there, we did an interview with her for the film, and she made a good point. Like, you may have an 8 or a 7 or 8-year-old ram on the hill that's legal, and he's beautiful, and he may be bigger than the 12-year-old. But if you kill that 8-year-old, you might as well have taken 2 sheep off the mountain, because that 12-year-old's going to die too. And there just aren't that many sheep. So like I said, leaving those breeder rams when they're healthy and taking those older sheep is super critical. And that age range varies from district to district, age, sheep herd to sheep herd. I mean, there's areas where you're hunting bighorn sheep where you're not wanting to take them unless they're 10+. Where I hunted in the breaks, it's hard to find a ram that's 10 years old plus. I mean, they get really big at 6, and then they have a shorter lifespan. So I think based on that, I think when you're looking at the Northwest Territories, they do have a good population of Doll sheep up there, and they do really focus on that older age class, where Alaska or other regions might not have as many older age class rams like that. So for you, you might be looking at anything 8 and up might be in that range where you're hunting. But
well, that raises an interesting...
it's just like anything. A trophy's different to everybody,
Right.
And at the end of the day, the outfitters really lean on you to take these older age class animals, and it's best for the wildlife. But, you know, everybody has something different they're up there to try to do, you know? So,
well, that raises an interesting question too, because, you know, the film's about trophy hunting. But you just said, you know, it kind of depends on what your idea of a trophy is, because an older ram is harder to find maybe, but, you know, if someone was really into it for like trophy hunting in the negative way that some people spin it, they might be looking for that younger breeder ram that's actually bigger and more in the prime of its life, right? Is that a question you guys kind of address in the film?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because it wouldn't be really fair to talk about the subject without talking about the negatives that do come with trophy hunting and some of the personalities that follow. It's just the nature of the beast. So we definitely have to address it, but it's not the example we want to lead by, I guess. You know?
And so you would say like that really the more trophy is the older ram, even though he's maybe not as big or strong as that younger 8-9-year-old.
Yeah, and with sheep, it's really important. You know, you can get away with not taking the matriarch every single time when you're hunting whitetails. You know, whitetails are still going to thrive and survive, and the herd is probably still going to do just fine for the most part. You might see some of that age or size quality dip a little if you're always just taking that middle-sized deer, but you know, with sheep, it's just important. And the other reason that we used sheep as an example is they're one of the only animals that wears their age right there on the side of their head. Mm-hmm. You know, you can actually see how old that sheep is. If you're able to examine him, you can get close within a few years, like a couple years. Yeah. You should be able to get pretty close as to how old that ram is. Other animals, you can't do that. Like take moose or elk or something, you know, a 3.5-year-old or even a 4-year-old, they can grow a pretty massive set of antlers that unless you're really breaking down body size, have an older one to compare to when it comes to body size, looking at all these other factors, you know, they can have these massive antlers that would make the record books at a pretty young age.
Yeah.
You know, sheep for the most part, it takes age and it takes, you know, it takes longevity on earth, and just the fact that you can actually see their whole life story and their age right on their horn is an animal that we thought was a great animal to use as sort of the quintessential trophy hunt. But we, you know, we definitely want to talk about, you know, there's nothing wrong with taking those bigger sized animals. Sure. It's just when it comes to sheep, if that's all we focused on was sheep, it wouldn't be good for the herd. And so when it comes to trophy hunting, we're definitely trophy hunting when we're sheep hunting, but that doesn't always just mean we're there to just get one bigger than the guy next to us on the mountain for bragging rights. You know, trophy is defined in so many ways, and that's what we want this film to really
for sure
sort of debunk that theory.
Well, for me, any legal ram would be a trophy, to be honest.
Yeah, and they are. I mean, they're magnificent animals.
Yeah, ever since the first time I went to Alaska, I was like, I have to hunt this animal one day, and it's not getting any cheaper or any easier, so it's better just to have one day be closer than later.
You know? That's exactly why I did it. I was like, I know I want to do it, and it's never going to get easier, so I might as well just jump on it. And that's what I did.
For sure, man.
So,
well, I know you're busy, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I don't know. Just last question: you got any advice for a young guy like me trying to kind of break in and make a career out of this thing?
Well, I think, you know, I would say just like I said, just do it for the reasons that mean something to you, and then figure out how to build around that rather than trying to chase something that you think people want to see or the way you think it needs to be done because of the way you've seen other people be successful doing it. I think as long as you just do it for the reasons that mean something to you in your heart, and build the format around that. I don't really see how you can fail. And, under promise and over deliver is always a great format to have too.
Absolutely.
People are always stoked with that. And I don't think you can go wrong with those two things. Treat people how you want to be treated. That's kind of what I live by.
Yeah. Well, that's good, man. Well, yeah, dude, I really appreciate your time. And where can people check out the show or your films or that kind of stuff if they want to see your stuff?
Well, Sportsman's Channel, we're on every Monday night from now until the new year, basically. We come on at 7:30 Mountain Time. And then we rerun 4 times or 5 times throughout the week. I'm not sure of those, but you can find us, with a search. Into High Country is the TV show name. And then from there, if you have Amazon Prime or Roku, Carbon TV, Waypoint, My Outdoor TV, the show can be found on there, as well as a number of the conservation films. Sweet. If you're in Canada, Sportsman's Channel Canada. And then online, my platforms, Facebook and Instagram, are just Jason Matzinger Official. Sweet. So that's really the main places.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks again for your time. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Likewise. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, man.
Best of luck with everything.
I appreciate it.